While browsing YouTube, I stumbled across this GT7 video, where this guy, Wolf Racing, claims that he just randomly blew an engine during a race. Now, the footage shows that his engine just randomly acquires heavy damage while driving. And in the comments, you can find a lot of speculation about, how deep this engine simulation goes, and people praising it and claiming they've also experienced it. The problem is that this isn't a feature in game. This is a bug, and it stems from the game thinking that you hit something and gained heavy engine damage. Now, before I go any further, I want to say I'm not shitting on this guy specifically, and I'm sure he's a great guy and has a great channel. The GT community tends to be very low information and spread a lot of misinformation, this being one of them, and if you don't know any better, it's very easy to pick up these things. So I'm not bashing this guy specifically. However, I did want to make a video about this topic. See, the issue is that a lot of people still think this game actually has a mechanical damage simulation based on the way you drive, and it doesn't. The only continuous damage that GT7 has is either heavy damage when heavy damage is turned on from hitting things, or the continuous mileage-based loss of power and loss of body integrity. Your driving will never affect that. There is several fake videos out there that do things like pretend people blew engines on track, and there's other videos such as this Wolf Racing guy where he probably just doesn't know any better. So today, I'm just going to make a video to throw out there to show this doesn't happen in game. No matter how you drive, you cannot damage your engine through driving in GT7. And I figure there's probably not a better way to do that than just by showing it in real time. Let's take a car, let's cram it full of boost and nitrous, and beat the shit out of it, and show you that nothing happens. And so we're going to go, and I apologize if the audio is a touch off. I'm recording the voice separate from the footage. We're going to pick an early 2000s Impreza. Now, Imprezas can be tuned to be fast, but anybody who knows anything about these cars is they can't handle a ton of power or abuse. There's a lot of jokes out there about Subaru engines, and while they can be tuned, you push them, they're going to have a bad time. So realistically, this is just a good car to choose. I'm sure I could pick plenty of other things, but I think this is a car kind of everybody knows. There's the jokes about Subarus blowing up motors, and it's a good example. If the game had a realistic engine, simulation where you could damage things, this would be a good car to try it with. Next, we're going to go to the tuning shop, and we are just going to put the biggest turbo setup on this possible. Just pack as much power into this, and we're not going to upgrade any of the internals of the engine. We're not going to upgrade anything, assuming that if we added engine upgrades that it would, strengthen things, forged rods and pistons and that sort of thing. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to cram it full of boost, and then we're going to give it nitrous too. We're just going to give it a nitrous system to abuse it even further, just to make sure that we really push this car as hard as possible. Because if, as people claim, which I'm trying to debunk, that you can destroy an engine through your driving techniques by over revving it and doing X, this will show that you can't. So then we're going to go to special stage Route X here, and we're going to go ahead and do a custom race. Going to try to set it up for as few opponents as possible. It can't set it to less than 2, so there's going to be someone out there with us, but I'm going to avoid them. Going to make sure we put these settings to set as realistic as possible. That's going to be a big one too. We're going to make sure our heavy damage our mechanical damage is set to heavy, and that means we can hit things and we'll get damage that doesn't repair unless we drive into the pits. If you put it on light, it'll recover itself after about 30-40 seconds. But if you put it on heavy, it won't recover itself until you drive into the pits and let the repair timers count down. Going to try to put as much space between us and the single AI opponent as possible, and just kind of set the general race up just to be realistic. Realistic, grip, all that, and some basic daytime conditions. That'll give us a nice, easy, straightforward run here. And go ahead and start. Looks like it spit out a 365 as our opponent. So we're going to go ahead and start the roll here. And I'm just going to continuously abuse this car. We're going to get it up to speed, and then we're just going to drop it into first at high speed. Anyone who knows anything about cars knows that's a pretty surefire way to blow apart something, either the engine or the transmission, whichever decides to go first. Even with built engines, you can look up video after video of, I mean, drag cars with built engines, money shifting, blowing their engines to pieces. So what we're doing right now, realistically, and feeding it nitrous at the same time, if this game had some sort of mechanic where you could blow an engine, it would be going right now. Our center engine with heavy damage on would be blinking red, and we'd be losing power, but we're not. Nothing's changing. We were doing 100 miles an hour in first gear, and we're feeding nitrous into the engine. You can see the nitrous option lighting up there as I'm pushing it in. This is serious abuse, and nothing's happened. We're going to run it through the gears back and forth. Again, nothing's happening. The car isn't losing power. The car isn't gaining damage. Pretty much anything would have exploded by now. On top of that, doing this in other games, specifically Project Cars 2 and Forza Motorsport, that have actual damage readouts and telemetry that shows what your engine's doing, if you do this in those games, which do have engine damage simulations, you will watch your engine degrade in real time. You will see your engine damage increase, you'll lose power, you'll lose transmission, it'll start shifting weird, you'll have issues with your clutch. That was a feature in both Project Cars 2 and it's in Forza Motorsport as well. It is not in this game. And so I could see people saying, oh, well, you have to do it constantly. Well, that wouldn't be realistic. And the other games that were in this game's realm of Simcade or Sim don't do it that way. They do it so that if you do this, you pretty much destroy your vehicle immediately. But we're going to keep doing this. I'm going to throw it back and forth because I saw someone talking about, oh, I bet they simulate the oil pan and the oil starvation. We're going to throw that back and forth because if this thing's doing 130 miles an hour in first gear, we're going to slosh that oil in that pan back and forth and really starve that engine further at that insane RPM as we feed nitrous into it. And as you can see, still, no engine damage. Nothing's happening. It's just not a feature in the game. But we're going to keep doing this to drive this point home. This is a 18-mile track, and I'm going to beat the shit out of this car for pretty much 18 straight miles. That's abuse that already would have blown apart pretty much any engine. I've seen some videos of older, specifically XJ Cherokee engines, the 4.0 AMC inlines they had, being put on the rev limiter for about 20 minutes, but those were not moving at high speed, and those don't make a ton of power. If you know anything about the old AMC 4.0s, you know they're kind of gutless. They just last forever. So this being a engine that's known for being fragile, as well as we've got quite a bit of power into this. It's got nitrous. It's making quite a lot more power with the extra, boost, bigger turbo that we put on it, bigger intercooler. This would not be surviving this at all. Or again, we're going to run it up to speed and just slam it back down to first. Absolutely, just try to destroy it. Going to keep doing this over and over around this track, and keep on. And at the end of all this, we're going to go through and show that this hasn't affected the engine condition at all either. This won't affect the oil status. It won't affect any of this. At the end of all of this, you can go in and see that it's going to say excellent condition on the oil and everything, because again, the only thing in this game that affects those conditions is mileage and time. That's all that affects that in this game. People will try to say different. There's anybody who knows anybody. I have a lot of time in this game doing planning for events, setting things up. I've tested most of the cars people will deal with for balance, modification, handling, etc. And if the people in the know. But you can see, again, we did it again. We slammed it down the first at high speed. We're going to do it again, and still there's no damage. The car gets up to speed perfect, no issues. And we're just going to keep doing this all the way around this course. So again, you know, we're almost all the way around this course. At this point in my experience in most other games, if I had the damage set to similar settings in Project Cars 2, this would have been a DNF about half a lap ago. The car would have maybe made it around the first corner. Again, that's a game that has a engine simulation that gets into even your oil pressure and temperature and your coolant, and where you can actually block off your ducting if you crash into the sand on the side of the track. And you can see right here, I mean, look at that, look at the tack. That is instantaneous engine destruction. In Forza Motorsport, this would be undrivable. I don't know. I've never damaged an engine in Forza to the point where the car DNFs. I don't know if that's a thing, but I know at this stage the car would have basically no power and be creeping around the track at 5 miles an hour. I have DNF'd them in Project Cars 2 many times, and this is far beyond the point of that. So if people are going to claim that this game has some sort of engine damage simulation on par with those other two games, which is generally what people think of, it's not there. Again, this is on heavy damage, which is the mode where the cars can be damaged like that. You can see I'm just rowing it back and forth through the gears. It's bouncing off the rev limiter. The car is screaming. We're out of nitrous. We have run the entire tank of nitrous through. At this point, this car has experienced out of this entire track probably about 7 straight miles of this abuse. The rest of it's just me bringing it back up to speed. So if this car was really on a track, well, yes, it's moving. It's jumping between this abuse and then never being allowed to relax or cool down and just being, you know, wide open throttle again. Now, when I get up here, I'm going to show how the actual damage model in GT works that is causing this bug, and that's that GT's in-race damage model is only based on impact. On heavy damage, you can damage your aero and your steering and your suspension. And the suspension and steering will just make the car kind of pull or handle funny. The aero will cause the car to become kind of pull slightly or become disoriented and kind of unstable. And then the engine will simply cause the car to lose power. So I'll slam it into the wall here, and you can see we damaged that steering. It's blinking red. We've damaged that front aero, if it even applies on this car. I don't know if it applies off the GT3 cars, but you can see there that it's blinking red, and you can watch. I'm going to run straight into this barrier. Keep in mind, we've done all this around this course, and boom, blinking red engine damage, because that's the only way you get engine damage in this game. We just drove this car around this 18-mile course. We put an entire bottle of nitrous in it. It's running modified engine, no upgrades for longevity, bouncing off the rev limiter for miles at high speed, and no change in the engine. But the moment we hit something hard, you can see immediately red engine damage, lowered power, and that's the end of the race. And there you have it. That's a full lap around Special Stage Route X. So let's go check on our oil and our oil condition, our engine condition. This is, again, something people claim. People claim that, oh, if you hit things or drive terribly, that your oil condition, engine condition will go down faster. And that's been tested a bunch of times. It doesn't happen, but here we are. You have plenty of evidence. This car just bounced off its rev limiter for 7 miles, roughly. And it's all going to show as excellent. This should have, even if it was just it affects the status of the oil and engine, a behavior like that should at least reduce it straight down to just bad or critical or whatever it's called when it needs to be changed. And again, we can look at it here, and it's an excellent condition. There's nothing wrong with it. That's, you know, I know this is a longer video, but this is just outright gameplay. And this kind of shows that this isn't a thing in game. This has been a topic for a while that pops up about once a month across forums, Reddit, videos, and I just got tired of seeing it. So I hope this was informational, and if you guys enjoyed this, I might come out with more content like this, debunking other myths in GT. Until then, have a good one.